Hello, you are on the Stories by the Fireplace channel. Make yourself comfortable. Enjoy listening to it. On the day before the weekend, time seemed to drag on painfully slowly. Thomas, the security guard at the big bank, was lolling tiredly from foot to foot and kept glancing at his watch. Lunchtime was over, but he couldn't stand still for another few hours. How he longed to be back at his apartment, eating a hot home-cooked meal. But that would have to wait. Tonight I'm taking mine to a new restaurant 2 blocks away, his partner told him. Remember, we've been walking around here for a week handing out flyers. Right there. Your madam's got a mouth on her, Thomas muttered back. Where do you get the money to go to restaurants? Are you moonlighting on the side? You could at least tell me as a friend. Why don't you share? Felix pressed his lips together as he looked at the disgruntled man. Thomas was not a pleasant man, but what could you do? You couldn't choose your colleagues, you had to work side by side. Most of the time he was in a bad mood. He treated bank customers with excessive suspicion and even contempt. He had no large sums to deposit. He was choked with envy at the sight of well-groomed bankers in business suits, whom women turned their heads in their wake. Thomas couldn't stand Fridays either. The bank room was full of nervous people who had decided to finish their business at the end of the week. They were talking among themselves, pushing and pestering the employees with a lot of silly questions. Couldn't they get everything done in time? The heat was unbearable. The air conditioners were not doing their job. A boy of about 8 years old who had climbed the stairs and confidently entered the building caught his attention. What did he want here? The guard muttered, giving the poorly dressed child an unkind look. He became wary. What if he is a pickpocket? There would be a fuss if someone caught the thief by the hand right in the department. It would make a fuss, and he didn't like to do the rest of his duties except stand guard. He never bothered much, letting his partner do everything himself. In the end, there was only one way out of this. If the boy did something wrong, he'd be caught right away, so there wouldn't be much fuss over it. That thought reassured Thomas. Despite his shabby clothes and the suspicious looks of the adults, who thought that now he would stretch out his hand and beg them for bread, Leo was not confused and confidently took the line for a voucher. Having received it, the boy went to the credit department and settled down on a bench, occasionally glancing at the scoreboard. "Boy, are you lost?" asked him a young bank teller as he sat down opposite. "How do you do?" "No, I came on business. I need a loan," he said firmly, looking at her without hesitation. The woman smiled indulgently and looked at the cheerful colleagues. "Look, you're in a serious institution. Only adults decide cases here. So don't fool around, go home, or I'll call security and they'll contact your parents. I don't think they'll like your pranks, am I right?" But Leo didn't budge. "Understand, I'm not kidding. Here's my mom's passport. I need a loan in her name. She's sick, she needs surgery, and she can't come herself, she's disabled. They give me alms on the street, but it's not enough. No one takes me to work, and I have no one but my mother. Please help me, you can do it. It's not that simple. We don't give money to everyone who wants it, okay? You're too young to understand it. Just don't argue and go home," the loan officer insisted, hoping the child would stop being stubborn. The boy's sad story caught the attention of the employees, but there was nothing they could do to help him. He was smart beyond his years and knew better than his peers. At first, they thought it was just another checkup, the kind of thing they usually do a couple of times a month without warning to increase the efficiency of the department. After such an event, the employees were repeatedly reprimanded for paying a lot of attention to hopeless customers whose visits did not bring the bank any benefit. They were often visited by the poor, the handicapped, the fire-ravished, and other unfortunates with broken lives who urgently needed money. Each bank employee could name a dozen heartbreaking stories that they had to turn a blind eye to because of the institution's policies. If you gave away money to everyone, you could end up with nothing. So the employees have learned not to react emotionally to the problems of others. "Honey, I'm sorry," Leo replied, "but no bank will arrange a loan for your mother if she has no income. You came in for nothing. There's no money. You'd better get used to the idea and don't hold up the line." "No, you don't understand. My mother really needs surgery. She can't get back on her feet without it. I'm not going anywhere. You have to serve me. Do something." Tears glistened in the boy's eyes. He tried to be strong, to ignore those around him, but he could not hold back any longer. As soon as he thought of the fate of his family, his voice went hoarse, and the tears poured down by themselves. An employee decided to interrupt the child's tantrums harshly and called for a security guard. Thomas loomed over him with a menacing look, indignant that this brat was the reason he was forced to leave his post and move a little. "What, have you been disrupting public order since you were little?" With a firm hand, the man easily grabbed the bewildered Leo by the jacket on his back and dragged him toward the exit like a doll. The man wiggled his legs and kept screaming for help, but no one stepped in to help him. The bank customers parted, hoping that someone else's restless, homeless-looking kid wouldn't rub his dirty hands all over them, which were probably full of all kinds of harmful stuff. At the gatehouse, to his annoyance, Thomas saw Austin Beggar, a 32-year-old banker who held the position of branch manager. The handsome, well-groomed, educated man was radically different from the security guard in his manners, appearance, and yes, hobbies. At the sight of him, Thomas always lowered his eyes, examining the polished boots of his expensive leather shoes. What kind of show? The manager was surprised, looking at the crying child who was clutching into a lump. Putting on the floor. Whose boy is that? Where are the parents? Oh, he was just walking around, trying to apply for a loan. He got hysterical and interfered with work, said Thomas, but he's actually a beggar. He's just scaring people. Not noticing the contempt in the eyes of the new adult, Leo decided not to waste any time. "Please, man, help me, please. Sorry for distracting the workers, but my family is in a desperate situation. My mom needs a loan for an operation. It's just the two of us, no one to help." Austin was surprised by the boy's courage and gently stroked his head. He believed in the sincerity of his words, no matter how absurd the situation seemed from the outside. "Don't worry, you haven't caused anyone any trouble. We'll go up to my office now and talk it over. We'll see if there's anything we can do to help you." Thomas saw them off with an unkind smile. It's always that smart guy who's the nicest, acting like he's the boss, setting his own rules, even though he's walking under the bosses himself. He better raise the employees' salaries, or it's a shame to show his face in front of his acquaintances. For a long time the man avoided meeting his classmates. He did not dare to meet his sweetheart's parents. Since childhood it seemed to him that he deserved more, that he should walk around in a fancy three-piece suit with a briefcase in his hands and conduct business conversations. But fate had decided otherwise, and now Thomas wore a uniform with security written across the back. If he had been paid decently, he would have been paid a pittance. But Austin made money out of thin air and was a member of several charities, regularly donating large sums to seriously ill children and homeless animals. What good would that do if the bank employees were suffering? Thomas did not understand. Meanwhile, Leo was taking the elevator up to Austin's office. The architecture of the building surprised him. The boy had never been in such places before, but he tried not to stare too blatantly. His mother scolded him for that. They'd always lived poorly, and she didn't want her child to poke and prod at everything like a savage and admire it loudly. Austin didn't mind his curiosity. He chuckled as he saw Leo trying hard to hide his interest. Being able to hold his own was a new reason why the man wanted to hear the boy out in peace. "Come in." He opened the door in front of him, pointing to a cushioned chair across from his desk. The boy happily sat down in it, but modestly folded his arms in front of him. "May I offer you some tea? Are you hungry?" "No, thank you, you are very kind," answered Leo confidently. "You are a funny fellow." Well, he pulled back a chair and ordered tea and cookies over the telephone anyway. "Tell me what's up." "My mother is very sick. She has a spinal cord injury, she can't walk, and I have to look for money in every way I can. I beg on the street. I know it's not good, and all kinds of people come across, push me aside, hurt me, but I have no choice. Where am I supposed to work at 8 years old?" Leo muttered, sighing noisily. "We used to be fine, but last year my mom got hit right in a crosswalk. Some rich guy. Mom didn't remember the license plate, but she saw that the car was expensive and conspicuous. The police didn't do anything. Mom was questioned several times, but they couldn't find the culprit. We live alone, and we don't have a father or relatives. There's no one to stand up for us. Others are helped by relatives and connections, but we only have ourselves, and we have to stick together. So my mom says, and now she's lying down. Sometimes she climbs into the stroller, but she can't cope with household chores. I have to. I don't go to school now, and Mom cries a lot because of it. A divisional policeman came to us and the school called. They say my mom isn't able to take care of me, and if this continues, they'll take me away from her and send me to an orphanage. And I don't want to go there. I have an apartment and a mom. Is that right? Is that right, Uncle? It's not my mother's fault she can't walk and earn money. If they could find the guy who did it, he'd pay for the operation. So I decided to take out a loan with her passport. They won't give me any money, I know, but she's an adult. I've seen on TV how it's done. Here, take it. Leo put the passport on the table, or do you need anything else? We'll give it all back honestly, but not right away. Austin sighed. He was already questioning his decision to get involved in this story. The boy's fate was not an easy one to envy, but one sob story wasn't enough. Who knows them, these crooks, what they are capable of for profit? And what if they already send children to the bank for a loan? Maybe the documents are fake too. Austin was not greedy, and he had a good heart, but he was not the owner of the bank, and he got the position only 2 years ago, and he liked it. The competition in their field was great. Everyone wanted to take his place and sit on it. The manager was pleased with the man's work, but he kept a strict eye on everything so that no machinations, secret documentation, or mistakes were made. If he was caught in something illegal, if the bank incurred losses through his fault, he would have no luck. Not to give Leo false hope, Austin said, "I'm not promising that you and Mom will get the money, but I'll explore my options and..." The man was dumbfounded when he opened the woman's passport and saw a familiar face in the photo. Soft features, dark hair, and blue laughing eyes betrayed the charm of Sandra's appearance, even when her lips were not stretched into a smile. Austin whispered the name, completely oblivious to the boy who was looking at him intently. He couldn't remember her name, but he couldn't forget that face. How small the world is. People say that phrase all the time over trivial coincidences, but it was at that moment that Austin was shaken by the tricks of fate. He had known Leo's mother very intimately, and they had had a short but wonderful time together. He loved the memory of what happened, and even Molly, his wife, was unaware of the story. "Uncle, aren't you feeling well? Shall I call somebody?" The boy stood up anxiously, getting ready to rush out of the office and call one of the adults. He could call an ambulance if he had to. With his disabled mother, he'd learned to make quick decisions. Leo only looked like a child on the outside, but he was strikingly different from his peers because of the dramatic changes in his life. No, sit down. I'm fine." Austin looked away from the obsession and realized he had scared the kid. Don't worry about it. I think I can help your mom. But we should get acquainted first, don't you think?" Leo nodded happily. The truly childlike smile appeared on his serious face, which he rarely showed. There wasn't much occasion for it. Austin glanced at his wristwatch. "I still have things to do. Wait for me here. You'll get a bite to eat just in time. I'll finish up and take you home, just in time to talk things over with your mother." "All right. Thank you very much." Leo, unable to remember his joy, ran up to the man and hugged him, not holding back tears. He no longer had any hope of help after the antics of the guard, who had dragged him unceremoniously into the street. "You are very kind. We will never forget it. I will be able to stay with Mommy, thanks to you." It was at least 3 hours before Austin was able to take his mind off the phone, the papers, and the calculator. His head was buzzing from all the hard work, and his thoughts of Sandra constantly took over everything else. He glanced several times at the boy, waiting patiently in his chair. He had received several of 4 sheets of paper and was quietly fiddling with them, making airplanes and ships. Austin was amazed at how plodding and inconspicuous an 8-year-old could be. Boys his age usually stomped, screamed, climbed everywhere, and touched things that didn't belong to them. Apparently, he had to grow up early and realize the responsibility. Leo had no right to be careless. This thought hurt Austin's heart. He could concentrate on nothing else and decided to take his work home with him. A more worrying problem had to be solved, or it would not rest. "Leo, get ready, we'll go now. Wait for me in the hall. I'll be there in a few minutes." "Okay." The boy nodded obediently and folded all the sheets on the table. Thomas kept glancing at his watch. Just 30 minutes to go. The beggar boy caught his eye again. This time he was sitting on the bench, dangling his feet and humming happily to himself. The man's curiosity was piqued and he came closer. "Why are you so happy, kid? Just go home. Your mother must have lost it." "Nice spank you have here," smiled Leo. "The nice man said he'd get us alone. I just need to meet my mom. And that aunt said she couldn't do anything. She just doesn't know how to work, does she?" Thomas' eyebrows rose in surprise at this information. Gee, what a fool that Austin was. The man had another reason for keeping a close eye on his boss's every decision. The fact is that a few months ago, after work, a luxury car, which Thomas had never dreamed of, pulled up to him. "Thomas Ross," came a voice from the lowered window in the back seat. He couldn't see his face. "Me, what do you want?" "Sit down, I have a job to do." Soon a man was sitting in the leather lounge opposite a stranger in a cashmere coat, surrounded by expensive oriental scent. He was Luca Fisher, a banker, considered a rival of Austin, who had collected dirt on him within the walls of the bank, which he himself was not a member of. He needed a man to gather the necessary information on him secretly, until a major infringement was discovered on Austin. And no matter how much the bank owner valued the talent in his face, he would not forgive unprofitable blunders. It was not in his nature. "You're a smart guy," said Luca Thomas. "You're worth a lot more money than you make in this wretched security firm. If you help me, I'll make it worth your while." "Anything." He agreed immediately. "And I can snitch. I've got the right job for it. No one will go past me unless I let them." The man turned his nose up. "I proved myself in the army. Our commander was very appreciative of me. How quickly we hit it off." "You're a smart guy," Luca grinned. "I have a feeling our collaboration will be fruitful. And when I take Austin's place, you can be sure I won't forget you. I believe in you. You will be a great leader, I have no doubt." Thomas immediately realized what kind of man his new boss was and decided not to waste any time. A chance like this comes along once in a lifetime. Meeting Luca was his golden ticket. So the man resorted to his favorite trick, flattery. "I thought I was the only one who could see the rotten nature of Austin. I admire your perceptive mind. He has charmed everyone around him, but he is not what he seems. There's certainly something about him. You just have to dig a little deeper." I won't let him out of my sight. I'll report to you every day what he does. I'm sure you'll get what you want very soon." Thomas accepted the offer without a moment's hesitation. He's never turned down easy money, and this is a double benefit, both to make money and to make Austin a nuisance. Thomas doesn't like him, no matter how you slice it. He was all right, walking around with manicured fingers and his head held high. He's been on Secret Service ever since, sniffing around like a rat. Only Austin wasn't involved in anything criminal. Until this day. In his mind, the man was already rubbing his hands together. He knew Luca would like his news very much. Apparently, it was time to oust the snooty man. Finally, Thomas would be able to teach Austin a lesson. But he also had a reason to secretly sneer at his boss. He had been in contact with Luca quite often, had seen him in different ways and at different times of the day, often with a lady. This lady turned out to be Austin's wife. Thomas found this out by chance when he saw the boss with his wife at lunch and recognized her as Luca's mistress. The boss made him promise not to talk, threatening to make his life a living hell if everything was revealed. It never occurred to the man to cross such a serious man. He valued what he had and wanted to curry favor with Luca, waiting for the cherished laurels when he became manager. For the long drive back to the apartment, Leo Austin was silent. He was immersed in his own thoughts and didn't even hear the boys ranting, apologizing in advance for the mess in the apartment and the fact that they didn't have anything to treat him to. The man wasn't a romantic, that wasn't how he'd been raised. But a familiar thrill awoke in his chest at the thought of seeing Sandra in just a few minutes. He hadn't told anyone that he sometimes thought about how it might happen, but none of the options suggested such dire circumstances. It would be difficult for a woman to show up in front of him in such a state, but it was necessary. Leo lived with his mother in a 2-bedroom apartment. It hadn't been renovated in a long time, but it used to be cleaned regularly by a woman's caring hands. Only now the room seemed cold and lonely. "Mom, it's me," the boy shouted from the threshold, dropping his stomped sneakers. "Leo, what took you so long?" A worried woman's voice came from the bedroom. "How many times have I told you not to stay out? I won't be able to go looking for you." "Don't worry. I brought my uncle from the bank. He'll help." "Hello, Sandra." Austin walked over to the bed and looked at the one he had never forgotten. Her luxurious hair was in a dull braid, her clear, sly eyes were lined with shadows of weariness, her face was sunken, but none of this frightened the man. He cautiously sat down on the edge of the bed. "Remember me? I'm Austin Beggar. We met 8 years ago. I was coming back from a business trip at the time, and your village had 2 tires busted at once. I had 1 tire, but without the other, it was suicidal to drive in a downpour. I barely made it off-road into your neck of the woods and knocked on the first house. You opened it for me. You must remember something else." Austin squinted at the boy, not knowing how to voice in front of him that there had been intimacy between him and his mother that night. Sandra opened her eyes in shock, looking at the man, and hurriedly called out to her son, "Kitten, leave us alone, please. See what we have for dinner. Come on, don't look at me like that. The grown-ups need to talk." When the door closed behind the boy, the woman turned to her guest. "So you are the Austin." She smiled faintly. "My sister did not lie. You are as handsome as she described." "What sister?" Austin did not understand. "It's not me in your memories, it's my older sister, Jasmine. We're not twins, we just look very much alike." Everyone was confused, even the neighbors sometimes. Sandra's face had a sad smile on it. "Only Jasmine is long gone. She died in childbirth, a terrible complication, and no good doctor could be found nearby. By the time we got a car from town, it was too late. Who Leo's daddy was, she never found out. She had some secret love, but she kept her secret strictly. I had to replace the baby's mother." "My condolences." Austin barely spoke up. The news of Jasmine's passing and of her baby's death completely threw him off balance. His thoughts flickered feverishly in his head, unwilling to form a coherent picture. It seemed as if he had just grasped the most important thing, but no, he hadn't. He had expected to see Jasmine paralyzed but alive, but now he didn't know what to do. Memories began to surface one by one. Austin was very young, unmarried, on his first independent business trip. When he reached the village after the car situation, the door to the first house was opened to him by the charming Jasmine. She let him in, listened, warmed him up, gave him her father's old things. In the girl was immediately noticeable housewifely. The small wooden house was cozy, not a speck of dust in spite of the creaking shutters in the wind and the peeling paint on the floorboards. That night, the young men talked a great deal. From the first minute they met, they both felt an inexplicable kinship. You might think that only happens in the movies, but few people can boast that they recognize their man right away. "You'll think I'm talking nonsense," Austin said then, sitting next to Jasmine in the modestly furnished kitchen. "But I feel as if I've known you for 100 years. "Me too," she giggled. The boy reached out gently and tucked a dark lock of hair behind her ear that had fallen out of her high ponytail. Then he gently stroked Jasmine's cheek and, meeting no resistance, leaned closer for a kiss. The night flew by like the blink of an eye, but it was a time to remember for the rest of their lives. Neither one regretted anything, but during the parting it was clear it would not happen again. After breakfast, Jasmine asked a neighbor to help her friend by sharing the spare. Austin wanted to pay for it, but the man waved his hand cordially. "Why are you giving me a piece of paper? You give it to me, take it. A simple thank you is enough for me. You just do not hurt Jasmine now. She's a good girl," said the neighbor. This little village adventure left a deep mark on the soul. The unselfish people surprised me with their kindness and welcome, and Jasmine was forever remembered. Then Austin could not submit to his desires, could not leave everything for a life in the wilderness. So he left there and made the decision never to return. It was hard for Austin to imagine that Jasmine, so bright, brave and perky, was no longer alive. Suddenly, the man was aroused by Sandra's words that her sister had never told him who she had given birth to Leo. It was like an electric current ran through his skin, and the boy could be his son. By the timing, it could have been. "I'm sorry for your loss, too," Sandra said softly, looking at the guest. "The news made you pale. You must have cared for your sister as much as she cared for you." "You are right. I'm sorry. I didn't expect. It's all so sudden. I can't get it into my head." Austin was becoming more and more upset by the minute. He could feel the anger rising inside. It was as if he had been deceived, tricked. And if he had listened to his heart then, instead of thinking with his parents' head, he would have been a happy family man. He would have married Jasmine, she would have borne him a son, and he would never have let his beloved die. He would live his life for his own pleasure, not giving a damn about the opinions of others. The man lost everything all at once, not even being able to enjoy it. 8 years ago, upon returning from a business trip, Austin began to behave differently. Father and mother immediately noticed the change in their son's behavior and realized that another woman was to blame. "How dare you go out with the girls? You have a wedding coming up," shouted at Austin and his father. "If her family finds out about your affairs, they'll skin us all alive. No one, you hear me, no one will admit us. All you had to do was marry Molly. She's the key to your success. I've always told you, you have to be among the rich to live well. If you're a nobody and you're rushing up without proper support, you'll never be acknowledged as one of your own. They'll think you're doing something you're not cut out for. I don't give a damn." Austin couldn't stand it. "I don't want any riches. This is your dream. I only have one woman. I'm serious with her. I'm in love, okay? No Molly is a match for her. I'll be happy with Jasmine." "Stop yelling at each other." Austin's mother came running into the room, stunned by her men's loud argument. "Calm down, both of you. This is a difficult time for everyone. We need to calm down and act as we planned. No amount of argument from Austin made his father and mother take his side. Their family had always lived modestly, but the couple had worked hard to give their son a brilliant education. They hoped that their child would never know want or experience the hardships they had faced in their time. Austin respected his parents. Having fallen seriously in love for the first time, he allowed himself to raise his voice to his family. Previously, he had listened to them in everything and did not contradict them. The man had been instilled a sense of duty, and he could not give it all up after a single night with the village beauty. Mother was right. Who knows how Jasmine would have behaved in the relationship? It might not have worked out, and Austin would have lost a lucrative match. Now all the fears and doubts seemed ridiculous to the man. He should have chosen Jasmine, should have raised his son. If Leo was by him, Austin married Molly, but their marriage was not a happy one. At first, the kinship with the wealthy bore fruit. The man was quickly promoted, but not without his personal efforts and skills. He gained confidence, as his father had said, but that was where the good things ended. The heiress to a multi-million-dollar fortune was in no way an ideal wife. Molly had grown up in luxury and had no intention of keeping the family nest comfortable. She was a cheerful woman. I'll give her that. She and Austin had a lot in common. Only she liked to have fun and show off for her friends. The first problems between the spouses began almost immediately. Austin was annoyed that his wife was only busy spending money. She constantly visited beauty salons, boutiques, social events, arranged parties with girlfriends in their house with alcohol and a lot of people Austin did not know. Eventually, he got the expected promotion and went headlong into work. And Molly was glad her spouse wasn't nagging her about partying anymore. With each month of their marriage, there were fewer and fewer strings that bound them together before. In addition, the woman flatly refused to have children. "Oh, give me a break, you too." Mom kept pushing, asking for grandchildren. "My father worries that I'm going to be an old mother. I don't want kids at all." "Well, or not now. Look at my body." Molly defiantly took off her clothes. "Do you agree that all this will blow over? You're not a woman. You wouldn't understand. I don't want to turn into a nursing hippo." There's nothing wrong with pregnancy. It's a natural state of being a woman. If you're afraid I'll like you less with a few extra pounds, you're very wrong. I love you in every way. Austin kissed his spouse affectionately. She would give in, but she never agreed. Now Austin's marriage looked more and more like some kind of arrangement, a contract. He rarely saw Molly and even rejoiced, devoting himself to his work. Sometimes he worried about his future, but thought that there would be a better time to think things over and decide how to proceed. Austin stayed at Sandra's apartment until late in the evening. Together with Leo, he went to the store and bought groceries for the family. Sandra persuaded him not to court them, but the man was adamant. He stared at Nina's son for a long time, looking for familiar features in him. Deep down, he had already recognized that the boy was his son, and he sought confirmation of that. On Monday morning, Austin showed up at the bank with the express intention of taking out a loan on Sandra. He planned to pay it off himself. Despite his good salary, he did not have a sum of money available that could pay off the debt for the operation at once, but he was willing to accept any hardship. Letting Sandra walk and letting Leo stay with his mother had become paramount to the man. Now he could think of nothing but his child. That same evening, Austin visited the Vasilyevs to tell them the good news. "Sandra is about to have an operation. I don't know how to thank you, Austin." The woman cried as she hugged her son. Leo was glued to his mother, listening to every word the adult said. "I'll get a job as soon as I get out of rehab. I will pay back every penny. Do you want me to write you a receipt? Let's get it notarized. I can't believe it's true. You've helped us out so much." "Calm down, Sandra. You don't need anything. The important thing is that Leo stays with you. I'll pay it all myself. It's my duty. I think I owe it to Jasmine. Things might have turned out differently if I hadn't gone away then. You're not guilty of anything. Don't even think about it. You're very decent. I've never met anyone like you. Austin corresponded with Sandra every day. He felt the need to communicate with Leo, and with her too. The man sent him pictures of the child, told him about his late sister and how they lived together with their son. The man was interested in just talking to someone who wasn't talking about lip augmentation procedures, hair extensions, or limiting himself to professional conversations. In moments of conversation with his family, Sandra Austin felt truly alive. He had been so engrossed in nothing but work, communicating only on business matters, that he didn't notice how he lost most of his friends. Marrying Sandra severed many ties. Some of his buddies thought he was a calculating careerist who used a successful marriage to achieve success. Others simply envied him. A red degree from the Financial Academy came in handy for the man, and they couldn't fulfill themselves. While Austin rejoiced in life, looking at funny pictures of Leo, an unseen threat loomed over him. After the boy showed up at the bank, Thomas took advantage of his friendship with some colleagues and learned that his boss had indeed taken out a loan in the name of a certain Sandra. Convinced of the reality of the transaction, the man reported everything to Luca. "I'm sending you a picture of the contract, Luca Fisher," Thomas said into the phone. "What is about to begin?" "Good work, Thomas. Just don't tell anyone for the fun of it, understand? Keep your mouth shut." Once again, returning home around midnight, Austin found Molly at home. "Hi, honey." The woman kissed him with her scarlet lips, surrounding him with the thick scent of perfume. "You're a little late." "Hello, I didn't expect to see you at all. It's the end of the quarter. I'm checking the reports. My head is already swelling with the numbers." The man lied on the move, loosening his tie. That evening, like the week before, he spent at Sandra's, getting used to their cozy apartment. Sandra protested, but Austin helped Leo with his lessons, so that the boy did not fall behind the school curriculum and the teachers did not disturb the already restless woman. And it turned out that the boy had a talent for adding and subtracting numbers in his head. Austin even showed him examples of multiplication and division in columns of large numbers, and he had no problem solving them. "You're such a hard worker," Sandra smiled as she parted her hair and crept up behind her husband. "It wouldn't be fair if that boss of yours didn't appreciate such sacrifices." Thin fingers with long fingernails encircled the man. But there was something in his wife's tone that didn't set him up for love games. "I have nothing to worry about." "I don't let Blake Cooper down," Austin replied, getting rid of the embrace. The next day, just before Austin was about to leave for lunch, his boss burst into the office. "Good afternoon, Blake Cooper. What brings you here? Would you like to have lunch?" "I was just about to." "You lying idiot," the man shouted, slamming the door behind him so as not to attract the attention of the other employees. "I gave you my business, my complete freedom, and now you want to stab me in the back. Please calm down and tell me what this is about. What are you accusing me of? You've made a nice place here, haven't you? It's been a long time since I've been here, so you think you can command the parade yourself. I can smell guys like you a mile away. And you're good. You tricked me. You seemed pedantic and honest. I know about your scam. Are you trying to launder money through me? You're making shady deals, aren't you?" "Blake Cooper, I have nothing to do with any dishonest activities," said Austin firmly, which only made the man more angry. "Get out of here at once, and don't show your face here again. You'll pay off this loan in 2 months, or you'll have a lawsuit on your hands. Get out of here before I shamefully drag you out in front of everybody." Austin tried to talk sense into the boss, but he wouldn't listen. The man understood. The loan in Sandra's name was taken for fraud, but who needed it? He decided to deal with everything later when Blake cooled down. Only the look on Thomas's face said otherwise. Everyone at the bank already knew what he had been accused of. News was spreading faster than in the dormitory, and whispers and speculation were being heard on all sides. No one else believed in Austin's good name. For half a day, he drove aimlessly around the city, forgetting his hunger. He was struck by the incident with Blake and tormented by resentment. After all, he had given his whole soul to his work. There had never been any complaints against him. The man did everything perfectly and demanded the same from the employees of his department. All documentation was always accurate and handed in on time. The plan was fulfilled on a monthly basis. How could this happen? Who had set him up? Why didn't he feel anything? And why was he so careless? All these questions tormented the man until night fell on the streets. Austin knew his wife would not be thrilled with his dishonorable discharge. The son-in-law of a well-known man was not to be spoken of as a thief and a crook. All the gossip and talk that would go around them was already swirling in her head. Molly, though she loved to watch the vultures circling over someone, making their life a living hell, would hardly be happy if she found herself in such a situation. Reputation played a major role for the woman. She wore her status proudly, like a garment. The wife was not at home. Blake stood under a cool shower for a long time, refreshing his head. It had only now dawned on him that he had a loan on him that he had pledged to repay. Now how would he admit to Sandra and Leo that the operation was in jeopardy? He had pledged to pay it all back. And if he can't? What happens when Molly's father finds out? What if the family turns on him? If Blake sued, as he had promised in anger, he would not be able to afford a decent lawyer. Molly showed up around 1 o'clock in the morning. All that time, Austin sat tensely in the living room, waiting for the front door to open. He did not call his wife, knowing that she was unreachable in the evenings. Loud music at favorite hangouts drowned out everything. The woman was in good spirits, threw off her high-heeled shoes from her tired legs and staggered toward her husband. "Bunny, I'm home," she sang, "and you're not asleep. Something happened. Who hurt you?" Molly collapsed on the couch next to her husband. The sight of him sobered her up a little. "You're scaring me. Did somebody die?" "I got fired," said Austin softly. "Somebody set me up, twisting one loan as a fraud on my part. Baranov couldn't stand it and threw me out right away. I don't know who ratted him out, but I'll find out. Someone needed to remove me. I'm sure it wasn't a mistake." "Are you serious? You're unemployed now. What are we gonna live on? What are we going to do, beg from Daddy?" That was the first thing on Molly's mind. "You've been begging your whole life," Austin snapped. "What are you worried about? You've never worked a day in your life. You're just looking for someone to extort money from. Your husband has been framed, insulted, humiliated, and his reputation built up over years ruined. And all you can think about is that you won't have money to go out. Listen, you bastard. Who's got a beef with who else? You wouldn't have gotten the manager's job without my daddy, you upstart. I'll have you know that you've been in that chair for years thanks to this call. Shut up. I earned it. I'm more competent than anyone who's ever applied for it. You are not to reproach me." For a few seconds, the couple glared at each other, and Molly was the first to perk up. "I will not live with a loser. Get out of my house. Let's see if I can live without your miserable little salary. Is that what you want? I'll leave. That's the last straw, Molly. I've seen enough of your girlfriends and your parties and how you all have nothing in your heads." His wife, wounded by his words, circled over him for a while he packed his suitcase. But the man did not fall for her provocation and did not say another word. The day turned out to be uneventful. Everything was changing too rapidly to accept what was happening. At that moment, Austin really thought that the best solution was to break up with his wife. Let it be for a while. Let it be until the situation becomes clearer, but to live apart. At 3 o'clock in the morning, Sandra woke up to a phone call. Austin had warned her that he was coming and asked for an overnight stay. With difficulty, the woman got into a wheelchair, cleaned herself up, and woke her son to help prepare a bed for the unexpected guest. All talk was postponed until morning, and it was decided to go to bed. There was an oppressive silence at breakfast. Austin told Sandra the whole truth. Nothing was withheld. At first, the woman was silent. The hope in her eyes faded instantly. She was not one to believe in miracles. The encounter with her sister's longtime lover had alarmed her, made her believe that things could change. And now the future seemed hopeless again. Even thinking in a good way seemed foolish. "I don't know what to say," Sandra confessed. "I lost my ability to walk because of some scoundrel. And now your career and marriage are ruined because of me. But I didn't mean. I never meant you any harm." Her eyes filled with tears. She pressed her hands to her mouth so that her son in the other room would not hear her sobs. The last thing she wanted to do was to frighten him. The boy had just started to come to life again, talking about friends, school, the soccer section, where his mother would soon take him. "Sandra, don't cry, it's not so bad." Austin tried to reassure her, but he could hardly believe that he could find a good way out of this complicated situation. "I have property. I'll sell it and pay off the loan. I'll save the funds for the operation with all my might. You need it. If it was all meant to get you walking again, you will walk, I promise." He sold everything of any value, the car, all kinds of equipment, but the proceeds were not enough to pay off the loan. He tried not to show his despair to Leo and Sandra, but they understood. In a short time, the 3 abandoned people in the small apartment had become like one family, sharing all their joys and sorrows equally. Sandra's life was made easier by Austin's help. Leo never took a step away from him and watched him with admiration. There had never been a father figure in his life to look up to. Though taking care of his ailing mother, the boy asked to be considered an adult. It was nice to relax next to a real strong man who cared for them with all his might. Looking at the communication between Leo and Austin, Sandra realized that her heart was beating too joyfully. One evening, she decided to have a serious talk with her friend. It was not the first day she had observed his pensive face and absent look. She was sure the man was up to something. "Tell me," she said, blocking the stroller out of the kitchen. "I see you have something on your mind. Tell me. I want to know. I may not walk, but I have a brain. 2 heads are better, as they say." Austin looked at her and sighed. He hated to give Sandra yet another false hope, but it looked as if he couldn't do without her help. "I think we have to find out who caused that accident. It can't be that no one saw anything. There has to be some random passerby who remembered the license plate and make of the car. A teenager who videotaped the whole thing and was afraid to admit to his parents that he was skipping class at that moment. I feel like we don't know everything. I literally feel like someone is breathing down my back. It's uncomfortable. I thought it would be over after I quit, but the feeling won't let go, and I'm used to trusting my gut." "You're right about that." Sandra patted his arm. "If the feeling is strong, you shouldn't ignore it. Maybe you're digging in the right direction. I'm sorry this is going to be painful for you, but I need to know all the details of the accident, everything you can remember. It would help a lot." They talked for hours. The conversation was not easy. Sometimes Sandra stopped in the middle of a sentence, unable to control her emotions. She had to relive that nightmare evening again, when, as she always did, she went out to get groceries along the familiar street on the safe crosswalk. Her life changed in an instant. Someone decided they could break her body like she was an emotionless doll and get away without paying for her tainted fate. Eventually, exhausted by worry and tears, Sandra fell asleep on Austin's shoulder. He carried her to her bed and put her to bed, realizing now that he wasn't just seeking justice for the woman, he wanted revenge for her. A few days later, Austin met up with a longtime friend who works for the authorities at a coffee shop. "Good to see you," Alex said, holding out his hand. "My lunch ends in 40 minutes. I suggest to get right to the point." "Okay, thank you." Austin went over the details of Sandra's accident, her diagnosis, her financial situation, and the threat that Leo might be taken away from her mother. "I see you've done some serious preparation." Alex smiled. "I heard you. If it's important to you, I'll do what I can. I've got a heater in mind. He's not exactly within the law, but he's helping us to go in the right direction. I won't promise anything, but I'll do my best for you." Austin was glad he still had people he could trust with a big secret. The meeting with Alex bore fruit very soon. The man received the car's DVR footage from the supermarket parking lot just as the hit and run occurred. After the incident, the owner of the car left on a long business trip, so he did not show up for questioning by the police. He was the necessary witness that would have allowed the perpetrator to be discovered immediately. "It can't be." Austin moved closer to the laptop screen and strained to look at the faces of the people sitting in the luxury car, which had entered the crosswalk as Sandra walked across it. At the wheel was Luca Fisher. Austin knew him out of professional interest. Not a nice guy. The painful revelation to him was that his companion was Molly. The man immediately dropped everything and began to remember where his wife was supposed to be that day. March 14 was a date well known to the man, for it was his mother-in-law's birthday. He was late then and arrived at his wife's home late, only she was no longer there. Molly had such a headache. Her mother lamented. She left almost immediately, said she'd take a pill and lie down. Only the woman came home late. Apparently, she decided that hanging out with friends was more fun than an evening with prim parents who pestered her with questions about her heirs. Austin didn't pay much attention to his wife's shenanigans. In 7 years of marriage, he was used to her always disappearing into the company of the same spoiled idlers, and she never got tired of it. Now the man realized. He'd misjudged his wife. God knows how long she had fooled him by having a lover. What a fool he'd been. That creep who'd hit Sandra obviously knew about Austin, had met him somewhere, only he couldn't remember where exactly. The unexpected discovery excited the man so much that he couldn't sleep a wink that night. He recalled all of his wife's silly excuses. All her lies now seemed so blatant. Sandra was taking advantage of the fact that her workaholic spouse wouldn't dig into her friendships and be jealous of her of anyone. That's why she kicked him out so easily. I mean, she was having an affair with Luca Fisher. What does it cost her to swap one banker for another? It was not for nothing that she declared that she would live without money, for she had long ago found herself a new sponsor. When the mental agonies were put aside, Austin's thoughts concentrated on Luca's personality. One would have expected anything from such a man, but hitting a pedestrian, he suddenly remembered noticing Thomas in Fisher's company a couple of times. A calculating, ambitious banker wouldn't just be friends with a simple security guard. They definitely had something in common. Austin barely waited until dawn to start getting ready to visit a former colleague. He needed to crack Thomas to expose his connection to his wife's lover. "You're not my colleague anymore, and I don't have to say anything," the man said defiantly, standing at the front door. Now that Austin had been fired, Thomas did not need to treat him with respect lest he lose his job. He thought his patron had unleashed his hands and his tongue. "Get out of here. Otherwise, I'll throw you off the property as a suspicious person." "You don't know what you're getting yourself into," Austin told him calmly. "Luca is walking on thin ice, and if he goes down, he'll drag you down with him, so don't count on his defense. He's got a felony on his conscience, and I've got proof of that. If you don't want to go down for complicity, you can tell me all about the thing. And if you don't, try to prove to the station that you didn't know about it." Thomas thought about it for a few seconds, struggling with his greed, but something in Austin's gaze convinced him. Even though the man didn't like him, he wouldn't lie. And if Luca had anything to do with crime, he wanted no part of it. "All right, come back when the shift's over," Thomas put forward his terms. "We'll talk. Not in front of everyone." In the evening, having received all the information about Luca from a former colleague, Austin went to his wife's house, where he found the lovers. "Why are you here? Get your things when I'm out of the house." The woman was about to slam the door in her husband's face, but he would not let her. "I know you're with him. May you be interested in what I came with." Luca greeted his guest with a smirk, sprawled out on the marriage bed in just his underwear. "We're like a joke," he laughed softly. "You're a hard nut to crack, Austin. No scandals, no fisticuffs. Respect. Keep your respect to yourself. Now take a good look at what I have for you, and then we'll discuss." Austin thought he would feel satisfaction as he looked at the frightened faces of the lovers who realized what a trap they had walked into, but he was wrong. He was only getting angrier. "Where did you get that from?" Luca barely spoke, staring wildly at the screen. There were no witnesses. No one could prove. "Shut up, you idiot. He might be recording us. It's a confession." Molly shrieked, but then she was not. She, too, was in an unenviable position. "What do you want?" "Mind you, I can do lots of things. I have money and I can talk to Blake. He'll take you back. 12. That's right," said Austin without a trace of a smile. "I like businessmen. As it happens, the woman in the video is a friend of mine. After the accident, she cannot walk. She needs an operation. This amount." The man wrote down the number in the diary and handed the sheet to the lovers. "Will cover all the expenses. If you try to get out of it, there's already a record of it on my police friend's computer. There's no other way. We need to pay her whatever she needs." That night, Sandra Austin returned victorious, bringing a fancy dinner and a bottle of red wine ordered from the restaurant. Seeing his happy face, Sandra immediately understood everything. The man sat on his knees in front of her and kissed her. He had wanted to do it for so long, but he did not dare. And now the feeling of euphoria that everything terrible was over broke down the barriers. "I thought I'd never wait." The woman laughed through her tears, kissing the tip of his nose. "Let's hurry to the kitchen before Leo sees." Dinner passed merrily and pleasantly, but the boy had to be soothed for a long time. He was so relieved that his mother would soon recover, that they would not be separated, that he could be a child again and run carefree in the yard, chasing a ball with the neighborhood boys. "Mom, I want Uncle Austin to be my daddy. He loves us, doesn't he?" Leo whispered before going to bed when Sandra stopped by to kiss him and say goodnight. "He does, my little sunshine. He will stay with us, don't worry." Sandra herself felt like she was about to burst with happiness, realizing that she had finally found her love and the path to healing. 2 weeks later, Molly and Luca were able to collect the agreed amount and pay off Austin and Sandra, and the couple filed for divorce. Wasting no time, Sandra headed to the best clinic in town for a consultation. Endless trips to doctors, taking tests began. She looked exhausted on such days, but did not lose her smile. She knew that all this fuss pales before what comes after. Austin and Leo never left the woman's side, surrounding her with love and care. What if it doesn't work? Sandra worried. What if I stay in the wheelchair? Austin, you are a very good person, and you deserve a full, healthy woman. Sandra, no, let me tell you. If it doesn't work out, I'll understand. You need someone who can share all your interests, not shackle you to one place. I want you, period. He kissed his sweetheart. I don't want to hear any more of this nonsense. Sandra was worried for nothing. The surgery was successful, as the doctors assured her. Rehabilitation took a long 7 months, but the woman was surprisingly tenacious. She did not give in to despondency and never missed a class with a physical therapist. Doctors marveled at her success, motivating other desperate patients to fight for their health. How beautifully you walk," cooed Austin, habitually supporting his beloved by the elbow. Just like everyone else, Sandra answered playfully, "No, you do everything in a special way." A year has passed since Austin and Sandra met. Sandra was no longer sobbing in bed, unable to move her legs. She was dancing in front of the stove, cooking dinner for her family. The energetic Leo made friends and was out all day long as soon as he finished his homework. The boy became the favorite of his math teacher, who had been puzzled by his failure last year. Austin's business also went from strength to strength. With the money he received from Luca, he paid off his debt to the bank and was able to invest in a profitable business. He bought a pavilion in a shopping center and opened a furniture store. Previously, the man had not noticed his interest in interior design. He rarely paid attention to the surroundings. His thoughts swirled around the numbers. But the change touched him as well, allowing his imagination to get out of the box. Austin's parents took their son's drama hard. They had no idea what kind of snake-natured woman they had pushed him into. "Forgive us, honey," cried the man's mother. "We meant well after all. We didn't think she seemed almost a murderer. I owe you an apology," my father once said. He always found it hard to admit his guilt, but this time the situation was no trifle. "I'm sorry that I suppressed your will, and I'm surprised at what a strong and determined man you've grown up to be. I'm proud of you. Almost broke you, but you stood your ground. That's worth a lot. Take care of your family. Your Sandra is adorable." Austin and Sandra had their wedding in early September, when the sun was out. The man thought it was impossible to love more, and then he saw his bride dressed in a gorgeous white dress with a wreath on her head and a veil, which gave the image of mystery and tenderness, and he fell in love again. "I am the happiest man in the world," he whispered to his wife as he put an engagement ring on her finger. "And I am the happiest woman and mother of 2 children." Sandra smiled slyly at the most responsible moment at the wedding. Austin laughed loudly, which surprised all the guests, and gently twirled his wife. The party was a success. Everyone who wanted to dance danced until they were sore. Those who wanted to have fun laughed until late at night and toasted to the health of the young couple. Alex, who played a key role in getting justice, witnessed and kept many videos, this time of those that elicited a hooting smile rather than tears. When Sandra was 7 months pregnant, the Austin family moved into a spacious apartment where everyone had their own room. Now Leah wasn't shy about inviting friends over and throwing toys everywhere. "She's going to love it here," Sandra sighed happily, leaning on her husband as she looked around the cozy, pastel-colored nursery. "Do you think she'll look more like you or me?" "I want her to have your smile," he admitted, affectionately stroking his wife's big belly. "Hey, baby, your mommy and daddy and brother are already loving you and waiting for you. Don't call her before she's due." The woman was immediately indignant. 2 months flew by unnoticed. Austin went crazy the last week before the birth, packing a bag for his wife at the clinic. The role of father of a tiny creature was new to him. He was worried about whether he could handle it. But as soon as the man took the sleeping Katie in his arms for the first time, he realized that being a father was the best happiness in the world. And the little girl got a smile from her mother after all. If you liked the story, please support me with a thumbs up button. It's only 1 click for you, but it's very important to me. Thanks in advance.